Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Govs on the Go Alumni Edition, a podcast featuring alumni from the College of Arts and Letters here at Austin Peay State University. My name is Dr. Buzz Hoon. I'm the Dean of the College. I'm also the host of the podcast. And today I'm talking with Melissa Otero, who is a two-degree holder with a bachelor's degree in 2004 and a master's degree in 2006, but they were both from our college in English. Welcome to the show, Melissa.
Hello, everyone. Melissa Otero here. It's nice to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, you come very highly recommended from some of the folks here that still remember you, and we're going to talk about your time at Austin Peay. But won't you give everybody a life update? Where are you and what's going on?
I live in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. I'm an associate dean at Kaiser University for the online division. So I manage weirdly allied health programs. It's not really my field, but it's interesting. I am just finished my EDS educational specialist degree, and I'm working on my dissertation towards my PhD in education. So my proposal was just accepted, and I'm waiting in the next week, I hope, for IRB approval so I can start my study.
That's excellent. Wow. I remember those days and the journey that will be, and I'm excited for you.
It has been a journey.
Let's rewind and go a little bit back to your beginnings. You mentioned that your dad was in the Air Force, and I'm sure that meant traveling around and life around finding the different places to live around the United States. But talk a little bit about, as a young person, finding that maybe you had some interest in writing and the love of reading.
Well, yeah, so I wasn't as lucky as some of my friends. My dad only got transferred about every 5 years. So my friends were headed to Germany, and we got sent to Biloxi, Mississippi, which is a
Oh.
beautiful place, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe not as fun as Germany. And and because we were military moving around, we didn't really have a lot of close family around us. So it's pretty much my two brothers and I and our parents. My parents attended college here and there, but they never really finished their degrees. And but I do recall, every weekend going to the grocery store with my mom, but we would first stop at the library, and it was always the library, and that was our thing. And I remember kind of transitioning from kid books to adult books whenever I first picked up Lamort Day Arthur, and I was like, well, if a knight wrote this, it must be great. And I was right, it was. And that really established my love for reading. And, so we kind of continued on. We ended up in Panama City, Florida at Tyndall Air Force Base, where I went to high school. And, it was a fun experience. And I was looking at college and thinking, what do I want to do? And originally I thought that I would go to law school. I thought, I'll become a lawyer, major in, poli sci or something like that. And so I ended up at Florida State. And honestly, I just had a little bit too much fun and was not doing well academically. I was a good high school student, and, good grades, AP classes, I wasn't valedictorian, but I was good. And I think that in a way kind of burned me out, because when I went to college, I was like, I just don't want to do this right now, and so after about a year at Florida State and not doing well academically, I decided to withdraw. And by this time, my dad had retired and moved to Tennessee. So I went to actually Middle Tennessee State University in Murfreesboro. And that was a good experience. But again, my head wasn't really in the game. So I decided to withdraw, and I started kind of being a nomad and moving around, moved out west with some friends for a while, and, and partied and stuff. And eventually that got old too. So I called my parents. I was ready to come home. So I went home to Tennessee, and I was working, and I met my husband, who's a Tennessee native, and we decided to get married and have a family. So we got pregnant with our daughter, and literally right after I had her, I realized that I did not want to raise a daughter in this world, not having my college degree. I wanted her to know that she had options. And my mom had mentioned Austin Peay. She's like, "Oh, I've heard of this school. Maybe you should check it out." So, we were living in really the Nashville area at that point, and so it wasn't too far. So my husband and I went up there. He actually went to school at Austin Peay as well, the culinary degree program,
Great.
and so we looked into it, and we both went ahead and enrolled, and it was wonderful because Austin Peay has family housing. And that's a huge plus, for us because we had our daughter, and during the time Austin Peay, we ended up having a son as well. So he was basically born there at Austin Peay, and so yeah, so we were there, in family housing, and then in choosing a major, because the moving around I had done, I started out like I thought law, and then I was like, maybe psychology, because everybody at some point usually majors in psychology. It's a great field, and and kind of business, and I was like, don't really like accounting. And so I went to Austin Peay, and I thought, I love reading. I enjoy writing. I enjoy other people's writing more than mine, but I do enjoy reading. So I thought, why don't I major in that? I can still go to law school if I decide, or I have options. And yeah, so I majored in English. My minor originally was more theater, but communication arts was what I ended up with, and it was a great experience for us, for me, my husband, and our family.
That's awesome. And I tell you, Melissa, that I'm sure it was not easy having two young children at some point along the lines and still keeping up with your education.
Oh, for sure. I remember this. I'll probably always remember this, but I was in Dr. Barnes' American Lit class, and I had just had my son. He was born August the 16th, and class started, like a week later. And I was in my senior year. He was an oops baby. So I was like, well, I didn't want to miss classes, and I had Dr. Barnes before. So I took him to class with me, and I put him in underneath the student seat, and she's lecturing and doing her introduction. And then you just hear this little coo from a baby, and she's like, "What is that?" And I'm like, "There's a baby, here and stuff." And she just kind of like smiled and then continued on. But I felt really comfortable. One, he was just a baby, he was a blob, at that point.
Mhm.
And so I felt comfortable bringing him, and that, my professors would be okay with it as long as, he wasn't like a disturbance. And so yeah, so he really was, a big part of that. Actually, I remember I took Arthurian romance that summer, and he literally was almost named Gareth or Gawain. He's named Gabriel, but I was like, Lancelot, and my husband was like, no, no, yeah. So it was definitely influence on us.
Do you think that it because I've talked with lots of students that considered non-traditional, and the fact that they came back later on, and how much they had matured or maybe just focused their intellects to say, you know what, it's time to buckle down and to get this degree and to get it done. Did you have that sort of attitude?
Most definitely. Like I said, I had kind of waffled around in life, and my kids were a huge motivator, and not even so much because of gaining a career, but like I said earlier, I wanted them both to know that this is an option, and sometimes you don't follow that straight route, straight out of high school and going to college and so forth, and so by watching their father and I go through this, they realize that they have options. So like right now, both of my kids, neither one are in college. Kind of disappointing, but at the same time, they need to walk their path.
That's
And
right.
so my son is very artistic. He's an actor and a magician, and so I don't necessarily see him doing a traditional college route. My daughter, she's always wants to be a mom, so I have two grandbabies, and so she's focused on that right now. But she's like, yeah, when they're 5, I plan to go back, to school and stuff. So I think it gave them the freedom to not feel pressured that they had to, make a decision at 18, that they have time, to do this, and that'll be okay. It makes it harder in some ways for sure, but
Yeah.
they'll be okay.
Let's talk a little bit about some of the people that you enjoyed taking classes with, your professors that you remember.
Well, probably the top professor I remember, I was his grad assistant, is Dr. Schnell. He was just amazing. It, I'm a teacher, or I teach the way I teach because of him, because of his style. I see it in the way that I lecture, whether it's American Lit, which was his specialty, or other courses. I definitely have, picked up, his style of teaching. I still, think, often like, well, what would he say here or do here? And his classes were fun and intellectual. And at the same time, like I remember having a theoretical conversation on SpongeBob, like just, and what must have been going through the writers' minds, whenever
Right.
they come up with these episodes and stuff. And so, yeah, so he was amazing. And I enjoyed undergrad, but it does seem more like a blur. I would say in the master's program is where I really started to feel solid within, the English, program and department. And that's where, like Dr. Brockman and I, did our classes together. There's another a professor actually that works also at Kaiser's online division. She lives in just south of Orlando, Eileen O'Grady, and we went through the master's program together as well and ended up working in the same location. So we think that's funny. So kind of having that group, I really got to know everybody, and it really, content wise, made me understand, literature and language more. Dr. Eves was wonderful with British Lit. The Dr. McWilliams, as a freshman, instructor, she really helped me in the sense of teaching freshman students. How to. It's kind of harsh, but I remember the dean, whenever I first started, whenever they offered me an adjunct position at Austin Peay, she said to me, your job is honestly to weed out students. They're either going to make it or break it in this class. And I've always kept that in my head as, I think everybody's possible to complete school if you, like, say, if you have the drive for it, but it also, that comment made me remember that I have to have the standards, that I'm not just letting people slide by here, that, if they can meet the standards of my class, they should be able to do well in their other classes. Other professors, Dr. Keterman, Dr. Eichhorn, just amazing, courses. Dr. Keterman did not like my writing style. It caused a lot of discussions in class. But I walked away learning a lot, from that. I know I'm forgetting people. I mentioned Dr. Barnes earlier. Like they're just all amazing.
No, that's terrific. And as you said, you got an opportunity, I think first as a teaching assistant, but then you mentioned as an adjunct to get your feet wet, and dip your toes into the teaching end. Is that when you kind of thought maybe there's a future in this?
Yeah, like it's because when I finished my bachelor's, I was like, law school, I don't know, and I had started studying for the LSAT, and then I was like, well, let me go to grad school and try to, improve my own writing and, theoretical critical thinking skills. And so I applied for the graduate assistantship and was accepted. And within a year of that, of really under, Dr. Schnell and Dr. Eves, after a year, they offered me an adjunct position in my second year. Actually, me and Beatrix, Dr. Brockman. And it was funny because they were like, here's the book and here's the syllabus, go teach. And I'm like, what? But of course we had mentors, and I feel really bad for that first class. Whenever I look back, I'm like, oh, I was a horrible teacher, but not really. Like it definitely sparked the idea that I could do this, and then I looked back on my life and I thought, wow, my parents didn't finish college. They were well read and they were really eclectic in their taste of introducing my brothers and I to different stuff, and so they didn't have a traditional education, but they're educated, and they're teachers too. So even in the Air Force, my dad was an instructor at times, and he loved it. And so, like I said, I take Dr. Schnell with me in my style, but you definitely get my parents as well. And so, yeah, from the graduate program and being an adjunct did spark the idea that I could do this. Yeah.
So then you left and you went into, I think your first experience was at a public school setting?
It was a public school setting, yeah.
And
it was
how
rough.
Was it?
It was rough. It was, and part of it was because I am coming straight from college. So when I didn't have like the education, degree behind me courses. And so that was, a learning curve. And then it was a rough high school to be in. And actually I got hired in October, and I was like the third teacher going into that class. Like that tells you how rough it was. But it was a really good learning experience for myself. I learned what I can handle, what I can't. I had like 5 preps, different classes, all different levels. It was, definitely an experience. I think I cried almost every day I left because I didn't feel like I was teaching. I was babysitting and trying to keep, everybody alive at times. It was really tough. And I, whenever I look back, I think, it maybe more parent involvement would have helped, maybe more student engagement, but you're dealing with high school kids at that point. It's kind of hard to change the game, whenever they're, finishing up. I remember one kid in one of my sophomore classes, he was like, Miss, I'm turning 16 in a couple of months and I'm dropping out of school because all my siblings have, and I'm like, well, what are you going to do? And he said, I'm going to become a fireman. I'm like, you have to go to school for that. Like you have to, like that's a great idea, but you still have to finish high school and you'll still have to go to fire college and things like that. And he wasn't aware, but it was just his culture was like, yeah, we just don't finish school. And that broke my heart that there was, there's kids out there that feel that way. It's not important. Because to me, education is very important. You can lose cars and houses, but no one could take your education away.
Wow.
So I was like, I need to get out of here because I wasn't happy. And then I found a job. It was funny. It was like an ad that I think literally God sent to me, where it was like, looking for, a Catholic high school, looking for, a college level, English comp teacher. I'm like, oh, that's me. So I applied, and it's a great school. And I knew that once I walked into that school, that'd be a great place for my children to go to high school. And how lucky for me, so, I mean, they were still in elementary at the time, but once they came into high school, I was the luckiest. I got to see my kids all throughout high school, taught my daughter an AP English as well. And as a parent, usually you kind of lose your teenagers. They're off in their own world, but I really got to spend a lot of time with them. And it wasn't horrible, like you might, assume at times. Like my daughter would go in my purse at lunch. She'd be like, I'm getting money. And I'm like, I'm lecturing, and, she would, just come in and like take money from my purse. But it was a really good experience in a great school. And I had a lot of leeway there, even though it was a Catholic school. My principal was also an English teacher first, so he gave us a lot of leeway on what we taught. And so I was able to teach, things at the college level, and like Dante's Inferno, like that's a fun one to teach, you would think I would have to curb it, but I didn't. So I was real lucky in having that flexibility. And in my, I think I told you my AP scores were awesome at that school. They were really good, so it was a great experience.
And helping young people get prepared for their college education, the next step in their life, must have been very rewarding, as you said, to have some small part of that, just as other people have had small parts into your success.
Oh, for sure. They would, every year they would have previous graduates come back and talk about their first year college experience to the seniors. And they would always mention my class. They're like, yeah, she makes you write. And it was weekly. They're writing essays, and they're like, but they would say things like, 500 words is nothing. You go through Sweeney's class, having to write 500 words is just a breeze. And that's what I wanted to hear. I wanted to know that I trained them in a way that made their life easier as they went into college. And so seeing them now, like one of my students, I mean, she just finished her residency. She's a pediatrician in Tampa. I mean, that warms my heart. I taught her 2 sisters and her brother, and her, and I knew that was her dream, and she's achieved her dream. And I have another student that's a traveling nurse, and so she's, I think, in Amsterdam right now, and just amazing to to see that I made a difference in their life. Taught them, to write well, not just me, but a part of it, and to see them succeed in their dreams. Yeah, it's amazing.
Because
so I do miss that.
They'll have that for the rest of their lives.
It's true.
That's a gift, a skill that they'll use for the rest of their time. Melissa, one of the things that I want to make sure to talk to you a little bit about is teaching. You had the opportunity to go to London to help learn more about Shakespeare and to learn about teaching Shakespeare. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, it's called a teaching. Well, it's like teaching through Shakespeare, teaching through theater, and the idea is that they get a cohort of 25 teachers, and they go over to London for 3 weeks. You stay like in little college dormitories, which was fun in itself because it's been a while, and you take classes daily. You take classes in Shakespeare's language, costuming. Obviously the plays. We attended plays at the Globe Theater almost on a daily basis. But then, we're such, teachers and theater buffs. We're also going to the London Theater at night and wherever we could. Of course, like sightseeing. And it was a teaching through performance, so the idea was teaching us techniques that we can use to get students, not necessarily to become theater people, but to feel how theater is supposed to not just be read, but heard, and especially with Shakespeare's language. And it was just it was an amazing experience. We made a lot of friends through that. The 25 of us, still keep in contact with each other. And we, at the end, we had to perform scenes from Hamlet. And that was fun because, I had the to be, not to be speech with
Oh,
3 other, students. And my mom and my kids actually flew in because I was like, well, we're in Europe. We might as well do Europe. And so that was nice for my kids to see me on the Globe stage.
oh my
And
God.
yeah, it was a beautiful experience. And of course, there you have lots of excursions to see other writers or even go like to Shakespeare's house. And I remember going to an outdoor theater production. And it was funny about the outdoor theater production, and I imagine this how it was in Shakespeare's time, is that you could see in the backstage that this particular troupe, they would, come out to the audience and say, which play do you want us to do? And they would give you an option of 3. And so the audience would choose, and then they're running backstage, and you could see somebody feeding them lines. Well, that's how it was for Shakespeare. He was literally writing and putting out the plays almost immediately. So, they're getting fed lines, as they're walking onto the stage. And so it was very similar. But it was so fun and exciting. It really was.
Now, at the same time that you're teaching in high school at this Catholic school, you're also still maintaining your incredible work ethic, where you're
Right.
adjuncting as well,
Hmm.
and
Yeah.
that's so you is that when you got connected with Kaiser?
Well, yeah, I kind of started with Kaiser and the Catholic high school at the same time.
Okay.
My focus really was that I wanted to stay in higher education, teaching, and see where higher education could take me. But the Catholic high school offered me a really good, position, the opportunity for my kids to go to school. And I was basically teaching college, just in the high school environment. So I definitely wanted to keep my credentials, up to date and stay in the college environment. So I started with Kaiser in 2008 for on campus, like, night classes. And then I moved to the online division in 2010. And eventually they offered me a full-time position. So I was doing full-time both, which was hard at times. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's expensive living in South Florida. I'm not gonna lie, it's expensive. So, and neither salary was really enough. So, so I did both, and both jobs are really great about understanding that. Like, I couldn't attend certain meetings for one or the other, but they really worked with me on that. And yes, yeah, so I kept my feet, in the door with, higher education. And I taught similar classes, literature and the composition courses, for them for many years. And then I think it was 2022, right after COVID, that I was working on my PhD through Kaiser University grad school. And I decided to leave the high school. My son had graduated, my daughter. I was like, okay, it's time for me to transition fully into higher ed. And I saw the position for an associate dean. So I was like, oh, let me see what happens, and it was, I think a 10 interview process, which is not fun. Like 10 interviews. I'm like, didn't we do this by 5, but it's the process. And so I got to meet everybody, in the office of chancellor and stuff. And yeah, so then I was hired, and it's been great. The dean that I was under, he ended up moving to grad school as a dean, but we still see each other. And the vice chancellor of the online division, she's been my direct boss for 10 years. So it's been a very good experience.
Yeah, you must have wowed them. If you had to go through 10 different ones, you must have kept that up. And what's amazing, what I appreciate about your story, Melissa, is the fact that you went through school with your kids, and you did that. You were working 2 jobs, and then deciding, oh, I might as well get my PhD as well. So you just continue to challenge yourself along the way. And even though I'm sure leaving high school was kind of hard in the impact that you were making, but I'm sure some of that was a relief in terms of that you could focus a little bit more on what you're doing here, and not having to deal with the problems that come along with being a high school teacher.
Correct. It was, you can, read the articles and stuff in the news, and that's going on. And there's a lot, with the content that's being taught, but also the pressure, I think, that mostly, honestly, parents put on their kids is a lot. And I could see with my AP students, they were fine. They would, like, do the work or not or whatever, but they were fine. But parents would really pressure both of us a lot, though. They need an A. I want them in Duke University. And I'm like, well, where do they want to go? What do they want? Why are they taking 10 AP classes? Like, why can't we do 3, kind of thing. And I didn't like that pressure. I used to tell parents, let us be, their grades will come out fine. They're going to get what they earn. But I understand the competition, especially for, higher, and schools, Ivy League schools. I understand, but I didn't like that pressure that it put on me and the students. So then you add, like, all the changes to what's going on with the content, specifically in Florida, what can and can't be taught. So I was real lucky with my principal in the Catholic school. I had a lot of leeway, but stuff like that tends to trickle in still. And I see it slowly kind of trickling into also higher ed, which also worries me. So I kind of felt it was time, personally, like, so my kids had graduated, so it was time for me to transition. And in a professional way, I felt it was a good time to get out of the classroom. I do miss it at times. It's funny. I've had to occasionally cover one of my faculty because they have an emergency or something, and like, when my faculty had an emergency, so I had to finish her grades, and I'm like, oh, this is so much fun to be reading discussions and things, and I definitely miss lecturing about Shakespeare or rhetorical analysis or something. I do. I miss it at times.
Me too. I miss all the teaching part.
So, right. If that's all we did was just teach, life would be great,
That's right. Well, let's talk about your new job, because as a dean to associate dean, I was an associate dean for a while too, and I want to talk about what do you enjoy about being an associate dean?
It's rewarding in that, I deal with a lot of different kinds of students from all walks of life. So from traditional to non-traditional, I'm definitely able to make connections with them because I've been both routes. And I like, one is that no day is the same. Like, I never have a down moment. If I don't want to do this report, I have another report to do, or to mess with, or a student's call, or a faculty, or appraisals and stuff. So at times I feel like I'm paper pushing a lot, yeah. But we at the beginning of September, we had our graduation ceremony, and that was so much fun because all of our students are online. I see very few of them in person. The same with my faculty; they're all across, really all across the world. And so to see them in person was a lot of fun. And we took a lot of pictures. And graduation ceremonies are boring in nature, but to on a day-to-day basis, I'm mostly dealing with students that are at risk or problems, and trying to solve those problems and get them through. So to go to the graduation ceremony and participate with students that many times I didn't even know their names because they weren't a problem, was very rewarding to see, that moment for them. Many of my students in two of my programs are associate degrees for medical billing and coding and medical assisting. So many of those students never really finished high school. They got their GEDs or they really struggled. So it takes me back to that first high school I taught at, where I had the troubled students and I wasn't happy. And then I see these students, really fighting. I mean, some of them with all the troubles they have to drop out and come back in and things. And then finally gets that moment of the graduation ceremony is really rewarding. And it gives me hope for those students that I taught, for that 1 year, that hopefully they found something to turn their life around to where they know that they can progress in some way, whether it's college or something else. So I really like that aspect of that. I always have something to do. I'm always busy, and that I get to see the rewards. I get to see the final outcome, and it's not always bad. Sometimes it is, but it's not always like a bad thing. And so students will call me, some that have been at risk, and they'll be like, "Hey, Melissa, how are you doing?" Like we're personal friends, And what's funny is I'll know some of their voices too. I'll be like, "Hey, how's it going? How's your baby?" And that kind of thing and stuff, and that's really nice, especially considering that we've never actually have met, like face to face.
Well, I think that's a true blessing for Kaiser to have you on their staff in that position, helping them get through the process. It's just terrific, Melissa, and I'm so glad that you were able to share your story with everybody. We usually like to end with this question, which is, what kind of recommendations do you have for students at Austin Peay? I mean, you're helping students at Kaiser as well, but what kind of recommendations do you have for somebody that is maybe a non-traditional student as well, and they're thinking about finishing up their education?
Mainly, and I know that we've all heard this before, is don't give up. And if life throws you a curveball to where you have like a set plan, and life throws you a curveball and sends you in another direction, follow that direction, but continue with your goal. So I'm working on my PhD. I'm a grandmother now, and I always thought I would, but I never knew when it would happen. And even this journey has taken longer than I really wanted it to, but I see the light finally at the end of the tunnel, so to speak. So, and really getting my PhD is just for me. It's not required, for my job or anything. It purely is a personal goal. So have those personal goals and continue them even through like all those bumps in the road. If you fail a class, yeah, that sucks, but you know what? You just retake the class, and try to, figure out what went wrong, and then, and make those corrections. So I think it's really important in life to, reflect on, where you may have misstepped or made mistakes, and try to fix them. So the next time you're going down a similar path, you won't make the same mistakes. You'll probably make new ones, as you go down that path.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly. But that's okay. And if it does take you, I have students now that are in their 70s and finishing up their degrees. And that's just amazing to me, because again, they're not doing it for career at this point. They're doing it for their own personal goals. And so they never gave up. And so I think that's the most important thing is don't give up. And also in the sense of school, especially being an associate dean, communicate, communicate with your professors, communicate with your deans, your TAs, your advisors, all those people are a support system for you built within the school. And so use them and ask them questions. They're a wealth of knowledge. They have a lot of experience dealing with different kinds of students and situations. There's nothing that I don't think you probably haven't heard or that I haven't heard, with students, and we want to help. We want them to be successful. So use that support system.
Well said. And I say those exact words. We want you to succeed.
Exactly. Yep.
So use us and let us be of a help to you. So I'm so glad that we've had this chance to talk, Melissa. It's wonderful, and and I'm so glad that you were governor here and you came to school, and you and your husband have gone on into the world and doing wonderful things.
Yep. And you guys may get my daughter there eventually.
There you go.
Yeah,
We'd be
exactly.
happy to see you back in Clarksville someday.
Right. That'd be lovely.
And thanks to all of our weekly viewers and listeners out there for checking out the podcast. We hope that you will continue to join us as we profile some of the outstanding alumni we have here in the College of Arts and Letters at Austin Peay State University. So until next time, stay safe, take care, and God bless.